we look at slide strikes with the Hanbo.
This is the Kitsune clan, a group of sword enthusiasts who like cosplay, reenactment, and historical martial arts. If you have similar interests, feel welcomed.
We have already looked at the basic movements of the Hanbo and we want to derive further movements from the few that we have already reconstructed. So far, we have gripped the Hanbo with the hands in a specific position and we didn't move them. But we know already we can move the hands along the Hanbo because we also know it's a broken spear originally, and on spears the hands slide quite a bit. If we now want to slide the Hanbo, we get into one trouble, namely when we perform our 4 movements that we already learned, the Hanbo tip will not be at an advantageous position, so we have to alter our footwork to a certain degree to adjust the differences in distance. Meaning, if we take the block or parry movements against upper attacks, instead of making a step forward, we have to make a step backwards. Then we slide the hind hand to the end of the Hanbo and then the other hand closer to the other hand. By this, we move the tip of the Hanbo upwards with a striking motion. That's our derived slide strike from the simple upward blocks. For the lower block, we can already see this will also cause trouble. If we simply make a step backwards and perform the same motion, we will probably redirect the attack right into our leg. So instead of simply stepping backwards, we have to circle while stepping backwards. And then we get a motion that brings the tip of the Hanbo where before the middle of the Hanbo was used for blocking. In order to train these motions, it's best to start out with an attacker who attacks with a short stick, performs the attack but does not swing through, but lets the stick stand, so to say, and then we have time to train our Hanbo strikes effectively. The idea is to perform the strike in concert with the footwork, using the motion of the body to provide additional force to the strike. This may not be realistic in the sense of if somebody is attacking us with a stick, the person will not let the stick stand in midair to give us time to perform the strike. That's not the idea. The idea here is to train the maximizing of the force. In an applied version, we would not try to hit the stick. We would try to hit the hand. That's something you cannot really train well, and therefore we make the derivative with the stick. As a further derivation of slide strikes, we can look at the other blocks we did, where we had 2 steps with one block going over into the other one. If we slide in this motion, the footwork changes again. For the upper deflections, we can see that the footwork will lead to a circling type of backward footwork. You can try other variants and you will see this is the one that brings your downward strike, now that's what's happening, to the maximum force and the maximum optimization of the movement. It's a bit more complicated, but it's very effective. Again, if this is especially trained against a stick, you can probably strike the stick out of the hand of your partner because this is a very powerful motion. While we can probably easily see how we derive these 3 slide strikes so far from the original motion, the 4th one is usually less well understandable at first. If we perform our low block transition from one position into the other, then we don't really get to a real strike while sliding. What we have to do is we have to continue this motion a bit further, and then we can find a nice striking motion. So we basically start out with our double block, perform the slide, and then we have to bring it to the end. The footwork is now simpler than with the other low block because we basically only have to move a bit backwards to be in the right distancing. At first, it's often challenging for many students to perform power with this motion, but after some time it's relatively easy and it generates a hell lot of power. The trick is to perform the motion in a very relaxed manner, generating force by relaxedness. This is a general theme that we see in a lot of martial arts. They will tell you this aspect, being relaxed creates more force. This is an excellent exercise for exactly this relaxedness to perform a lot of power. Slide strikes are something that is very typical for the Hanbo, for a lot of other weapons as well, and it helps us to generate much more power than we usually could generate with a normal type of grip. Whenever you have a stick of the length of the Hanbo, a lot of people think of it like a substitute for a sword or a baseball bat, but that does not make use of the full potential of the weapon. Slide strikes reveal that we can change the distance very quickly, which allows us to control the situation very effectively, and it allows us to generate a lot of force with more control than if we would swing around the weapon like a baseball bat. Because we start out the motion with a relatively broad grip, we have a lot of control over the weapon, and only towards the end of the motion our hands are close to the end of the Hanbo, which means less of control, but of course it means also much more of a force because the lever is then more advantageous. Therefore, I really suggest training slide strikes. That's a helpful thing. You can of course be aware you need a Hanbo that is free of splintering surface. That's often a bit of an annoying thing. If you go to common martial arts traders, you will get Hanbos out of red oak. I have no good experience with the red oak stuff. I often had splinters in there. What is much more effective for training are plastic rods. I have trained with ertalon, so that's a type of nylon. That's a very effective type of material, and also polyethylene works well for Hanbos. The surface is very smooth. A further advantage is these weapons do not shatter. I have shattered several of the red oak Hanbos over the years, and they break in a very mean pattern, so they are usually then very pointy and dangerous. Also, the plastic rods have a certain flex to them, which means they don't transport the full amount of force, which for training devices is really advantageous. If you want to apply Hanbo techniques later on in real situations, it's of course heavily dependent how the stick you have at hand is exactly made, whether you can really make use of slide strikes. If you have, for example, bamboo with all the nodes, it's often very challenging to slide along the stick, but if you have, for example, a normal broomstick, slide strikes can be very effective. We have now explored one further aspect of the Hanbo, simply deriving from the already known movements, and we will continue so in future videos. We hope we could inspire you, and we hope to see you around next time.